Hey guys, what's going on? Top here again. A quick announcement for all of our patrons. Thank you very much. This is a free episode, so you're going to be watching this in its entirety. But if you already are a subscriber, go ahead and check it out. We've been adding ad-free audio episodes onto the Patreon, and this actually links to Spotify. So if you just go ahead and click on that Spotify signal or the little Spotify logo right there, you can connect your Spotify, get access to the ad-free episodes that will be released early, and just listen to it at your convenience. So thank you guys. We appreciate you. And let's start the show.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers.
We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they're controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us modern day slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government released.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation, and this is the continuation of our Book of Revelation series. Fridays are now for the Lord, and we are welcoming back once again Ed Mabrie. Ed, if you could for the audience, first off, let everybody know where they can find you, and then let's talk about what we're getting into today.
Sure. So you can find me at faithbyreason.net. That is my website. You can see that I finally got the Genesis series started. So I just put that up. And so you can also find me on my YouTube channel under the same name, as well as Rumble and on X.
All right, I'm excited.
It's been a minute since we've been on, and we missed a few weeks, and we didn't get a chance to talk about the Trump stuff. We talked about that on another episode we did with John Linhart. But yeah, lots been going on, but happy to be back.
Yeah, we are. Man, a lot has unfolded since the last time. I was looking at it the other day because just a little sidebar for those of you who have been wondering what's going on with our audio platforms, Apple Podcasts and things like that. We had a little bit of clerical issues, but those are all settled now.
That guy's fired. We killed him. We literally put him.
We sacrificed him to Moloch. But we were missing several episodes, so I had to go back and try to upload them again. And I think it was about 8 episodes, and I'm looking through them, and I'm like, okay, we had to have done a Revelation series somewhere in between these episodes, and no, it's been since
20 days.
20 days. Has it been 20 days? Jeez, man. So I mean, it really it was needed. It was needed that we were doing this right now because I couldn't believe it. I thought for sure we had done some, but no, the last one we did was 18. And we are up to number 19 now. So where did we leave off last time?
Wow. Okay. So we had just started to talk about the millennial reign, and what I did in our last episode, I wanted to kind of set things up to help people understand what the whole point of the millennium is. And so we kind of went back in time from the beginning all the way to the end of Armageddon, because I use the term dispensation only to denote these different eras of time. So don't think I'm a dispensationalist per se, Schofield Bible, which is really controversial right now. No. These are just different eras of time when God deals with people differently. And the big picture of it is God is trying to contrastively show that his plan for humanity is the only one that will work. Now, he knows that because he's God, but because he's contrastive, he wants to give everyone the opportunity to do it on their own. So the question is, would man ever choose to be like God on his own? Because that is really the whole purpose of that's the meaning of life. When you go to faithbyreason.net, you go to the Start Here area. The first series is, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of existence? And the point of existence is to be with God forever. But in order to be with God, you have to be like God. And since we have free will, we can choose to be like God. But God knows we're not going to, because we're imperfect. So in each one of these eras, like the first era of innocence, the question was, if man was innocent with no knowledge of good and evil, would he choose God? No. Then you have the the Antediluvian period, where man was given long life and to gather knowledge. Would he use that knowledge to choose God? No. Then you have Babel, where man was given purpose. That was a no. Then he divided them into nations, and he gave them, he gave them his law. Here's guidance. Will you choose me with guidance? Then no. Then Jesus came down, rejected Jesus. Then the Christianity says, if my spirit lives inside of you and gives you moment by moment direction and influence, will you choose me then over yourself? No. Man always chooses himself over God. And so the final one will be the dispensation or the era of the millennium, where he basically says, if I come down physically, Jesus rules the earth physically, a perfect world, and will describe what the world's going to be like. Will you then choose me? And the answer is going to be, as we'll find out, will still be no. So God can finally say, look, I've given you guys every opportunity, every reasonable chance to choose me over yourself, to choose me over you. You never do. Now he can implement his will, which we'll start talking about next week. So yeah, that's where we left it off. And so now we're going to describe what the millennium is going to be like and why it might not be what people think it's going to be. It's not heaven, and it's not perfect, because there'll still be imperfect human beings here. But I think it's really, really fascinating what God's doing here and why he's doing it. And we're going to, of course, touch on the little season, because this is where the actual physical word, the actual words are. And we'll get into, I'll talk about the different takes on the millennial reign. Some people don't believe it and why they don't. And of course, you'll get my take on it. And that should be today's episode.
It's almost disrespectful, right? Like we just had JT back on, and we're like, listen, run it again, and give us your best rebuttal of the rebuttal, and let us know what you think about it. And he did, and it's like immediately we have Ed back on. We didn't plan it to like.
No, it didn't. We didn't plan it to play out that way. But and on that topic, by the way, I know when you had when we first did the episode, the little season debunked, and then some of the content that you were putting on faithbyreason.net, you had expressed to us that there was certainly more than a few people who had a thing or two to say about it. Maybe weren't too thrilled with your assessment. And we didn't really get that pushback. It wasn't something that we experienced until very recently, where not only were we accused of obfuscating little season information because, we're some sort of operatives, some sort of federal agents, or
you controlled opposition.
Shills.
I'm
controlled opposition
you right now.
You
are the Nikki Haley of conspiracy shows,
of conspiracy podcasting, very much so. And what I will say is these people, it's you just can't please them. There's nothing that you can do. In the pursuit of the truth, you're always going to ruffle a few feathers. But needless to say, we did the episode, and it was a good episode. JT is not, he's not somebody that's going to die on that hill. He's just showing you what what he's finding, the information and such. When we came away from it, nobody's saying, oh, okay, you guys aren't chill. And it's not that I expected anybody to come out and say like, oh, we were wrong about you. But like, there's just no way to please everybody. And it's just, it's if you start exploring topics that are meaningful to people, there's always going to be a few of them that call you a Masonic shill. So I'm looking forward to whatever the next one is.
I will say though, coming away from the conversation with JT, I don't know how he felt about it. I think he was a little bit upset, like with just the rebuttal that we had in general, but I don't really care. I did come away feeling better, because my main contention is at the end of this thing, if Jesus comes back and the people who believe in the little season see him and they turn their back, then this is a huge issue, because you're going to be estranging a lot of people. And I asked him, I was like, well, what happens if Jesus comes back in the way that is predicted in the book of Revelation? And he goes, well, then Jesus is there and this is what we're doing. So I'm like, okay, so apparently at the end, it doesn't look much different from Jesus returning after the little season or after, the apocalypse, or the after the tribulation, the 7 year, before the 7 year period. So I'm like, okay, I guess I take some solace in that. Of just, the rest of it, I don't really know where to put it.
Yeah, I guess with me, I haven't seen the episode. I should check it out if it's up. I just want someone to make it make sense to me. It just doesn't, and I'm not trying to pick a fight per se. I mean, I'll be happy to be on with him. He seems like a decent enough guy. There's things that I've asked when people come at me and say, "Oh, you're wrong. You didn't do enough study." I'm like, okay, well, can you explain this thing to me? And I haven't gotten a clear answer. Maybe he does. I've listened to quite a few people who hold this point of view and this theory, and there are just areas that I have not heard a good explanation for.
Well, on that topic, I think number one, JT is a great guy, and I think that you and he would have an excellent conversation. I know that I would tune in to see that. He's not a guy that's into debate; he's into exploring ideas. And in his defense, I don't think JT ever set out to be the little season guy. He is a great content creator, and he touches on a wide array of topics. I think this one just caught fire in such a way. Even he will say it's not a hill that he's going to die on, but he has what, to his estimation, is a body of compelling, interesting evidence. But you can never anticipate how an audience is going to receive that. So just because JT says, hey, look, there's something interesting here, does not stop an audience from going, this is definitively the truth now, and anyone that obfuscates it is trying to get in the way of the truth, so this is not representative of him. He has a huge body of work. In fact, I'm sure to some degree he's not thrilled about being the guy who's now been worked into the corner as the little season guy. But I highly recommend people go and check out his work, because he's got so much to offer in the way of compelling content.
At the end of the day, you are the one who's responsible for what you decide to believe.
That's it.
What you should do is take in all the information. Take information from JT or any other little season person. Listen to what I have to say about it, and you have to make your own decision. Because when you stand before God, He's not going to ask you what I said. He's going to ask you what you believe and why you believe it. And take in all the information. That's really what you need to do. And I know he doesn't want to be, just like he doesn't want to be the guy who is the little season person. I don't want to be the guy who just debunks everything.
Right.
So I'm actually going to do another video probably in the next week or so where, because I keep getting, because after I did the little season one and after I did the one on Messiah 2030, I get a lot of requests. Hey, well, there's this new theory up there. Can you tell us this or debunk it? Instead of doing that, I'm just going to do an episode where I give you the tools to examine it yourself. I'm going to just give maybe 10 tools to apply to everything you hear. And you can decide on your own based on those tools whether you should accept it or not.
Right. And that's the best thing that you can do, is giving people the tools. It's like we do this show and we're never telling people to believe us as some beacon of truth. It's always like, here's compelling information, do with it what you will, and explore it. You know what I mean? We're just bringing to the table interesting conversation topics. And what is great about this little season conversation that has seemingly caught fire, today's episode to then expand on the millennial reign, I think is great. It's topical, and certainly people have a lot of questions because this has been injected into the zeitgeist. This is on people's minds. I'm happy that we can explore this topic and maybe hopefully answer some of those questions that not only these people have, but I have myself. So when it comes to the millennial reign, where would you like to start, Ed?
Well, let's start by just reading Revelation chapter 20. I mean, I think that's, it's a relatively short chapter, and then we'll kind of go from there, because it describes what happens and how it happens and how it begins and ends. And then we'll dive into a few more verses here and there. And we can go from there. Let's just start with chapter 20.
Okay, great. Let's pull that up.
Okay. All right, so there we go. And I'll just read from your screen, from the screen top. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he shall be loosed for a little season. And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them who had been beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received the mark on their forehead or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him for 1,000 years. And then when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. He shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. So we'll get to the great white throne next week, or well, next time. We'll see how that works out.
So
Okay.
right
Yeah.
off the bat, do you mind if I ask a question, Ed?
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think is the purpose of locking up Satan for 1,000 years just to release him again to deceive the people?
Yeah, it seems
To-
kind of.
It is basically, and I'm going to get to this more detail, but the short answer is to show that even after 1,000 years of the perfect rule of Jesus, all it takes is for the influence of evil to come back in the world for people to turn on him. Because we see that at the end of 1,000 years, it says people will surround the beloved city, which is Jerusalem. And they'll be as a sand of the sea. So after 1,000 years, the population grows, and it looks like the vast majority of the population, the vast majority, are going to be against Jesus after him ruling for 1,000 years.
We suck.
Pretty much. Yeah, and it's basically God saying, you guys are irredeemably sucking. You're horrible. You suck so hard. And there is no more doubt, like we said before.
It's incredible because when we were talking, at the start of the show about where we had been, it's like, well, if man is in a innocent stage, will he choose God? It's like, no. Well, what if my spirit dwells amongst him and steers him this way or that way? No, he still won't. It's like nothing will have us choose God, or nothing will make us choose God over ourselves. Even if it's like, well, what if I appear, come down, establish a kingdom, rule righteously for 1,000 years. And then after I've done that and I've proven definitively, I'll go away for a little bit and see and test you again. And you still won't do it. Like, man, we are miserable.
We are incurably retarded. It's just
incredible. Yeah. That is a little disheartening. You know what? I feel bad for God. You know what I mean? Because it's like he just wants to be with us, and we're just so retarded that we can't, we just can't do anything but pick ourselves. Incredible.
Pretty much. And that's actually a good place to be, believe it or not, feeling bad for him, because as people, the episode we did with John Linhart hasn't aired yet, but he talks about the intangible drivers, the personality of everyone, and God has one too. God's personality, he is exhorter perceiver. Exhorters are people, they want you to feel what they feel. So you're just basically saying, God, I feel what you feel. I understand why you're so upset with us and sad. Because imagine you do everything for humanity, and all they do is reject you for thousands and thousands of years.
You want to, and for people that don't not that anybody doesn't believe that, but you only need to look at your personal relationships to see examples of that. Like, everybody has, I think, in their life, someone who they've gone above and beyond to help. And not only does that person not reciprocate, but they go later on to turn their back on you in some really despicable way, one form or another. I know that there is sort of an aspect to human psychology that oftentimes the charity of others will be met with resentment from the recipient. So in other words, there's always this thing that happens, or if you lend someone money, let's say, and you would think that would solve a person's financial issues. Number one, it doesn't, because they have to do it on their own, it seems, in order to overcome this thing. But number two, there is, instead of a feeling of appreciation, you develop a feeling of resentment. And that happens over and over again. It's actually like a curious phenomenon. Go ahead, if you don't believe me, lend somebody an incredible amount of money. Just see how that goes. I bet you it's going to destroy your relationship.
I'll give you another example that's close to all of us. Your kids.
Exactly. I was just
Your kids are the number one. And again, we are, children of God. And your kids are the most ungrateful people in the world. My kids are. All of us. Because
how do you know my kid?
Because they're all like this. You give them food, you give them clothing, you give them everything, and all they want is, okay, that's great, but I want a new cartridge for my Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And we walk through the store, and he's like, I want this and that. And no, you're not getting that. Oh, you're not fair. Like, dude, I feed you. I give you a roof over your head. I pay the bills that give you, water and electricity. And I'm not fair because I don't want to spend $60 to give you some stupid video game you're going to get tired of in
That's
5 minutes.
exactly what it is. I've given you everything, dude. Everything you want. And on top of it, I don't regularly beat you mercilessly. I don't understand what more you could want.
Despite the
still I'm
temptation
the
to beat them
enemy.
mercilessly.
Dude, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that today, man.
So now you know how God feels. Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, feeling exactly that today. I'm like, I haven't slept in 6 years, and you get that. You still get that same thing where you're like, oh, this isn't fair. I'm like, you guys, but it's the exact relationship that we have with God, and it makes me really sad because I'm part of it.
I had a friend ask me, what is it like to have a kid? I said, it's a situation where you want to simultaneously hug and strangle someone.
Mm-hmm. Like a hug that just turns tighter and tighter and tighter, and then you have to check in with yourself, like, whoa, ease up, relax, let him go.
So keeping it going. So the millennium, it's very controversial for a lot of reasons. Most of eschatology is mostly because people have their own opinions, and because certain things haven't happened yet, even though some of our little seasoned friends think they have. That's the controversy there. I want to look at some of the three big categories of people who have the different ideas, different understandings, different interpretations of the millennial reign. The first is they're called amillennialists, people who basically they don't believe in a literal millennium. They don't believe that Jesus will physically come back to earth for 1,000 years. And so they will believe something along the lines of, well, Jesus is not coming back physically. He rules in our heart, and that's where his kingdom is. And they get this from some of the verses that in the Gospels where Jesus himself says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. He does say that, and that is true. But this will be a really good exercise for folks who are into it to go to the Gospels and look at when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven versus the kingdom of God. They're not the same thing. They're not interchangeable. The kingdom of heaven is inside of us. The kingdom of heaven is a spiritual realm, and we do have power over the spiritual realm. We've talked about this a few times before, in that when Jesus came, he not only did he died to give us eternal life, but he also died to give us power over the Elohim realm. Remember, Jesus was casting out demons. That was a big deal because no one had ever done that before. He gave his disciples that same ability to cast out demons. We talk about that prayer that's on the on faithbyreason.net, the spiritual warfare prayer. You pray it and they go away. You have power over them. That is the kingdom. So we can call it the spiritual kingdom. But there's also the kingdom of God. And that is a physical kingdom that has been was promised to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's what the disciples were waiting for. They thought when Jesus came, he was the first time in the first century that he was going to set up his kingdom at that point. And Jesus kept telling them, not yet, not yet. He didn't say no. He didn't say the kingdom's only inside of you and there will be no physical kingdom. He says it's coming, but I have to do other things first. So the people who believe in amillennialism obviously are the people who are secular because they don't believe in anything in the Bible, so they don't believe it. But from a Christian standpoint, the Catholic Church, the Catholic hierarchy, is part of the doctrine of Catholicism as well as other Orthodox churches that there will be no physical kingdom. I think the Catholic hierarchy believes it because, as my old mentor Chuck Missler would say, the idea of Jesus coming and taking over the world and overthrowing the evil rulers isn't very attractive to the evil rulers. So they're not into it. And they say, well, we have the kingdom. The Pope is, he's a vicar of Christ. He's Christ on earth. So this is the actual kingdom. And some of the Orthodox churches believe the same thing. A lot of Protestants believe it. It is actually amillennialism is the dominant Protestant doctrine of this. As far as the millennium is concerned, they don't talk about it. You will rarely hear it preached in pulpits, so they basically ignore it. And even Michael Heiser, the late Michael Heiser, who is amazing, and done great work. He doesn't believe it's a literal 1,000 years. He didn't believe it was a literal 1,000 years either. But he was an Old Testament scholar. He would talk openly about his disdain for eschatology. He was more about Semitic languages and things like that. But that's why when I was reading the verse, I kept emphasizing 1,000 years. It says it 6 times in those 11, 12 verses. So I think that's because the Holy Spirit was trying to say, look, this is 1,000 years, idiot. I keep saying it over. How many times I need to say it until you understand that it's 1,000 years? It's not allegorical. It's not an allegorical 1,000 years. It is an actual 1,000 years.
I want to bring this up really quickly. This guy's got an interesting name. Ignore that. But he says, Ed, the Pope rescinded his Vicar of Christ title. That's a fascinating turn of events if that happened. I wonder when that happened and if that is the case. Maybe some interesting things unfolding within the Catholic Church there.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if they changed their doctrine on the millennium, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But I know that every other pope has called themselves that.
Well, the Vatican has been going through a lot of strange things recently, and so I can't help but wonder if there is some validity to that. Maybe something changed because, they've been making all kinds of crazy decisions, not to derail us too much, but I do know that there was a time where they erected a statue of Moloch temporarily within Vatican City that had to be approved by the Vatican. It was a gold statue of Moloch. That was back in like 2020. And since then, we've still got a lot of weird things like the Pope saying that he wants to baptize aliens and all these different things.
I heard that a while back.
Yeah, and I just, there's no shortage of strange happenings surrounding the highest levels of Catholicism when it comes to the Vatican. And so I just wonder if, to his point... Here's
one more thing, and again, off topic, I'll bring us back, because it's something I want to talk to you guys about during the election. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed it since Trump has been putting his cabinet together. He's promoting a lot of Catholics into some of these roles.
Mm-hmm. So
that's very interesting.
We had that moment where he was compelling Christians to get out and vote. And there was a sneaky little moment where he touches his chest and he goes, "Christians, my beautiful Christians." And then he goes, "I'm not a Christian." And we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
I think that was a tell. I don't think that was sloppy language or anything like that, because his body language and the shake of his head indicated that he was in fact saying he's not a Christian. And so after that, he goes on to write a prayer on Truth Social, I think, and he's appealing to the Archangel Michael. And I thought that was interesting. Top brought up an excellent point with that. It's like when you are giving these, and this is an issue maybe with Catholicism as a whole, it's like when you are giving these things veneration or worship, like an archangel, well, that is one of the things that caused the fall in the first place, is that these angels were the recipient of worship that belonged to God.
Right, exactly.
And so then is there something to be said about like tempting? That's how Top put it, was like tempting, Archangel Michael. And so, and there was a third thing that happened, but he's never done anything to me that suggests that he's Christian. Mm-hmm. But there is, to your point, Ed, sort of a heavy lean on Catholicism, and I find that very interesting.
I think it's his press secretary, a few other folks. I don't know off the top of my head, but I was actually listening to another podcast where they were naming them. I'm like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
and I'm seeing a lot. Russell Brand, whether you believe it or not, he's Catholic. We talked before about Candace Owens. She's like heavy Catholic. So I'm just very, very interesting.
Yeah,
how that's becoming really, really prominent in the conservative movement.
Right, and I'm not saying that I have the greatest handle on this, what I'm about to say, but I do worry that we're going to see some form of like Christian nationalism or something like that, boiling up to the surface. But the real danger in it, this is another thing that I think Top points out really well, is when it comes to characters like Russell Brand. And he's espousing the name of Jesus Christ, which to me feels very much like a win. But then it's like, well, what version of Christ are you promoting? Right. And can you mislead an entire subsect of the population that is seemingly ready to receive Christ? We are at that point, right, where it's like things are so overwhelming. It's very obvious that we're engaged in spiritual warfare. There is a spiritual aspect to the corruption that we see taking place. And if those people are feeling in their hearts a calling towards Christ, could you then usher them towards a sort of straw man that you've created? And I wonder if that is the thing that's on the horizon, because we are at the cusp of like, I see some form of Christian nationalism coming.
Yeah, well, if you look at, we talked in the episode that's going to come out next week with John. We talked about how the people on the left were losing their minds after the Trump victory and shaving their heads and doing all this nonsense. But on the other side, people are Christians are very exuberant. They're like, oh, well, we're going to get all of our stuff back. The inflation's going to go down. We're going to enter into this golden age. I'm like, be careful.
Yeah.
I don't see a golden age coming.
Guys. There's a podcast, very small, but just started their presence on Twitter. And I want to say shout out to them because they tagged me in something today. I think their name is End of the World News Podcast.
Check 'em
And
out.
what they did was they made a video effectively taking down these kind of like Ian Carroll characters and a bunch of other people who were rising to prominence within the conspiracy world. And the reason he's doing a takedown on them is because they were ringing the bell until Donald Trump gets the win. And then all of a sudden they're like, good, this is awesome. The work is done.
Right.
Whereas, Top and I here on Nephilim Death Squad, we did not stop doing that. We may make jokes about, who are we to deny prophecy and he's a real fun antichrist and stuff like that. But we're not delusional. We don't see this as like, if it is going to get good, it's going to get good for a little bit. And then something else is coming behind it. This is
it's
like
a platform. It's these guys here, End of the World podcast.
Shout out to them.
Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
they're great. They and he made a good video on it.
Yeah, I see it as just an opportunity. Like we're doing these things where we're trying to not predict, but we're trying to figure out which way the world is headed, and it's not headed anywhere good. So I don't know, position yourself the best way you can, so that way when the blow happens, hopefully you could help some people around you, your family, you yourself specifically.
Yes, that's what the sermon's all about. That's the video I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks. Just giving people the tools to use discernment to make the judgment on your own and not be fooled. That's my passion right now. Is don't be fooled. The better you know God, the more wary you will be when someone says something that doesn't meet what you know about him. And that's honestly what Faith by Reason is all about. Understanding God, understanding his plan. So if anybody comes to you with representing God or his plan in a way that does not fit what you know, you can say, yeah, no.
And I would just like to go ahead, Top.
Me and David are going to be doing a deep dive on 3 important subjects really soon. The conflict with Ukraine and Russia. We know nothing about it to talk about it that way, but it seems like it's kicking off World War III, giving them long-range missiles that are manned by Americans. The second thing is so obviously the possibility of nuclear war and UFOs that frequent nuclear facilities and missile silos. We know that, the government themselves have told us that they've flown over, they've seen them there, they've even tampered with their weaponry, they've shut stuff down. And number 3 is the work of Cliff High that he's been doing about this predictive program. Well, what is it called?
Predictive linguistics. It's an artificial intelligence program that basically takes human dialogue on the internet, looks for key words that are emotionally charged, and through that, after they get enough data, they can derive various predictions. And
interesting.
They have some very fascinating predictions about what we're about to see coming in early December, and I think all these things are connected.
I'm looking forward to that. 2025. I've mentioned this a few times. I've been hearing for like 20 years that pointing to next year is something that's like big stuff jumping off. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, alien shit in the news every day now. And before we detach from this, I just want to say my final thought on that topic of this Trump administration. This guy, End of the World News podcast, nailed something that I had been saying for some time. And that something is within Trump and his group of like pseudo Avengers that have gathered around him, there is a representative of each potential conspiracy theory that is meaningful to conspiracy theorists. You have Rogan and, the whole pandemic issue. You have Tucker Carlson, and now he's talking about Nephilim's UFOs and demonic attacks. You have RFK and the inoculations and the fluoride in the water. You have Trump, who even has gone off on tangents, not only about the deep state, but also Obama's birth certificate. There seems to be this amalgamation of people who are coming with a conspiracy theory and addressing it on the world stage. And I think it's designed to lull conspiracy theorists. And if you want proof of that, this guy, End of the World Podcast News, is showing you Ian Carroll. What's the guy's name? I forget what it is. Anomaly, who's another big one on Twitter. They are big fixtures in the conspiracy community who make videos that go viral and people latch onto them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Looking to these people for information is fine.
I like these guys. I follow
like
these
them
guys.
too.
They follow me, but they, in my opinion, like I've been on spaces with Ian Carroll and I've spoken a little bit with Anomaly. They get geopolitics and they get these like bigger picture conspiracies, right? But they get the smaller picture conspiracies, right? But the bigger picture, the stuff that's like lying underneath, they don't really know
spiritual
about.
stuff.
Yeah, and Josie let me on a space with Ian Carroll, and I kind of like broke down some of this stuff, and then he started following me because he found it interesting.
Okay.
But it takes time to really dive deep into this, and I don't think they have. So that deception is going to be, they're ripe for this kind of deception, which is unfortunate. But
Well, that's it. It's like they led, and I'm not saying they led people. Just by espousing information does not make you a leader in the community. I'm not saying that they want to be, but what is happening is that people are following them because they've got good information, and now at this moment they're letting their guard down. And I just wonder if, hopefully, there are people within those groups that are going to use their own discernment and keep researching and not just let their guard down because one talking head or another said that it's okay. These guys are addressing our issues. So. Interesting times, but please let's
Yeah, you're most vulnerable when you're comfortable. And
Yes.
that's what's scaring me about people being too happy about this. Anyway, so that's amillennialism. People don't believe there's a little millennium. Then you have post-millennialism. There are two branches of that. One branch is called the kingdom now or dominion theory, and that theory, it kind of dovetails a little bit with the amillennialists in that they also believe that the kingdom of Jesus is in your heart. And they believe that Christians were going to conquer the world for Jesus, and then Jesus would appear at the end of. So for 1,000 years, the Christian church would dominate the world. They would bring everyone to Christ. They would conquer the world in the name of Jesus, and then Jesus would come back after the 1,000 years, and we would hand the world over to him. Now that became really popular during the 1800s. Because that was the time of the great revivals, the great awakenings, and all the missionary journeys. And it looked like Christians were winning. The gospel was being spread all over the world. It was going to China, to Indonesia, to India, to African nations. So it looked like the church was growing, and they said, well, we're going to conquer the world for Jesus. Now that lasts until about World War I. And they realized, well, maybe the world isn't getting that great because 20 million people just died. Then 20 years later, you have World War II. Estimate 50 million minimum got killed there. Then you have the communist revolutions, and then you have the 60s with the God is Dead movement. So you're not going to find very many post-millennials. There are a few of them. They're still around, but there are very few of them because they realize, we're not winning. The other branch is, again, the little season people. They have a different post-millennial. They think that we are after the millennium, but that Jesus already came 1,000+ years ago and set up his kingdom, and then he left for reasons. I'm still waiting for someone to give me a good reason why he would have left, and I'm gonna refute some of that when we look at some of the verses. And then we're in Satan's little season. So I think we're post-millennial because the millennium already happened. And finally, there are people like me who are premillennial, and premillennial just means that you think that Jesus returns before the millennium, and he sets up the kingdom. So amillennial, no kingdom. Post-millennial, it's either already happened or Jesus comes back after the 1,000 years, or premillennial, meaning that Jesus comes back and then the millennium happens. And the reason for believing it is because, as far as I can tell, it hasn't happened yet. So those are the three big buckets that that people take for it. So let's talk about what happens in the Revelation narrative and how this fits in. So this chapter 20 talks about the millennial reign, but before that we had Armageddon. And Armageddon happens after the bowls of wrath are poured out. So the 70th week of Daniel, what we call the tribulation, starts when the Antichrist confirms his covenant with Israel for 7 years. First 3.5 years, Israel, they think he's the Messiah because he's probably going to help them with the temple. He's brought about peace. He has this, he's doing all the things they thought the Messiah was going to do. At the midpoint of that, he suffers a fatal head wound. We talked about this in the Antichrist series, that I believe he dies and he comes back as a clone, and then he sets himself up to be worshipped in the temple. And yeah, you got to go back and read all the clone stuff. I don't have time to get into it here, but go back to the previous episodes. And he goes in the temple and demands to be worshipped, and he starts persecuting the Jews, the Israelites, and they say, well, I guess this guy is not our Messiah, and they take off, and they're led to to be protected by God for those last 3.5 years, and you have the mark of the beast, and everyone makes their choice. You either take the mark of the beast and worship the Antichrist, or you are part of the Jewish remnant, or you reject it and you're on your own for the next 3.5 years. And at that point, everyone's made their decision, and all the spiritual evil is on earth at this point. They've been cast out of the heavens, they're on earth, and then God pours down his wrath upon the spiritual evil, and now we have the bowls of wrath. Then as the bowls of wrath are ending and the earth is devastated, all the waters turn to blood, 100-pound hailstones are falling down, destroying all the cities. You have the great earthquake that destroys mountains and islands. Earth is a mess. All the trees and green grass are burned up, and the Antichrist has all of his armies march on Jerusalem to wipe out the rest of the Jews before they can ask for Christ to return, and to try to invade the heavens. Because I believe the Antichrist, his spirit is inhabited. He is inhabited by the spirit of Nimrod, and he's going to do what he did before Babel. We've talked about that before. And Jesus comes down. The Israelites cry out for him finally, and then 3 days later he comes back. He wipes out the armies. That's Armageddon, and then he takes the beast and the false prophet and tosses them into the lake of fire. And then we get to the next phase, which we just talked about, where he chains up Satan for 1,000 years and puts him away. So some of the things that we see happen in those verses that I read at the beginning is, first, so the earth is a mess. It's going to have to be cleaned up. I mean, I don't expect Jesus to come down and snap his finger and make everything like new again. Who's going to do that? Well, believers are. As we saw in Revelation chapter 20, I don't know if you want to bring that up again, it says that all the resurrected saints will rule and reign. It says, in verse 4, I saw thrones, those are set upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them who were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had worshipped the beast, who had neither worshipped the beast or took the mark of the beast. They reigned with him for 1,000 years. So these are people called the tribulation saints. These are folks who were martyred during this time. They will rule and reign with Jesus. And also everyone who died previously in Christ, so or were raptured, we will also rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. And all the Old Testament saints who believed in the promise. So everyone's coming back in resurrected bodies. So Noah, Abraham, Daniel, all the prophets, all the kings, Adam and Eve, all the disciples, all Christians we're going to be resurrected in supernatural bodies that are just like the body that Jesus had when he was resurrected. And among other things, in his new body, Jesus could enter and leave a room without coming through the door. He could so he obviously occupies additional dimensions than our 3 spatial dimensions and the dimension of time. So he's, it's assumed that there are at least 11 dimensions. Scientists have already have concluded that. So in these resurrected bodies, we'll be operating in higher dimensional states. So we'll be basically supernatural. So Jesus will have a plethora of supernatural, millions of supernatural people ruling and reigning with him, and they will be given certain types of authority to rule and reign with him. And this brings us to one of Jesus' famous parables in Luke 19. You may have heard it's a parable of the talents or the minas. Those are a chunk of money. And in the parable, it says that a ruler was going to go get his kingdom, and while he was off to establish his kingdom, he gave his servants some money. He gave one 10 minas, he gave another one 5, and he gave another one 1. And the one who had 10, he does well with it, and he says, well done, I'm putting you over 10 cities. The one who had 5, he did well, made another 5, and he says, great, you've shown well, I'm going to put you over 5 cities. Then you have the one who was a jerk, and he just buried it, and he says, and he gets cast out. The point of this is, this parable talks about the rewards that Christians will get based on what they do with the value that God has given them. And if you interact well with other people in the name of Christ, and you do his will on earth while we're here, you will be rewarded. Among other things, one of your rewards will be a certain amount of authority when he comes into his kingdom. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do with Faith by Reason. I want to have that reward. And so we'll be co-regents with Jesus. All right, I'll keep going.
There is something I didn't want to interrupt before. There's something I wanted to go back to when it came to you mentioning the mark of the beast, and I didn't think about this last time we talked about it, but is there any precedence in the Bible that talks about persecution for refusing? I understand that you'll be essentially cut out of the monetary system, which is going to be hugely detrimental to you. But as far as the way you'll be perceived by other people, I don't necessarily. I'm not picking up on anything that suggests you'll be persecuted for not
You'll be killed.
taking it. You'll be killed for not receiving the mark.
Yeah, it's death
Okay,
penalty.
that's a huge bummer. Okay, just checking.
And not only that, but
Imagine-
the people who are going to turn you in are going to be, your neighbor. I mean, we kind of saw this a little bit during the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
With the masks. Yeah, exactly. That was a precursor.
right.
Yeah,
The reason that I
absolutely
asked
believe in the precursor.
is because I'm wondering, life would be difficult outside of the fact that they're going to kill you. Even if they didn't do that, life would still be difficult. But you could imagine that you could have a breakaway civilization to some extent, pool resources with like-minded Christians, work together, create a barter system, things like that. And you go, well, that actually doesn't sound too horrible. That's just life without the internet or something like that for a while. And maybe that's more meaningful. But it sounds like it's going to have a hard time getting there if they're trying to kill you.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult. And keep in mind that during this period of time, there are going to be other supernatural entities on the earth that are going to be confined to our physical dimensions. So they may be able to know where you are, even if you go to Idaho someplace and get a hobbit hole or a bunker or something. It's going to be tough, but people will survive. Actually, this is probably a good time I'm going to read some verses that kind of describe what this time is going to be like. Give me one sec. I just had it up.
Because sometimes in my own mind, I'll kind of like fantasize about like how nice would it be, despite the fact that my job is on the internet. It's like we could use a detachment from stuff like that, and if we were forced to break away from the bulk of civilization to go and live in the woods and barter, then maybe that could actually be a little nice. But it doesn't sound like they're going to let you do that too easily.
It's not going to be easy. Well, what Top has pulled up is just a website that has like 100 of them. I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to read a few just to give you kind of a flavor of what this 1,000 years is going to be like with Jesus. Okay, so this is from Isaiah, from Jeremiah, from Zechariah. It says, "It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountains of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his path. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations. He shall decide disputes for many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks." That's on the United Nations building. That quote. "And nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore." So this will be a time of peace. There won't be war. "The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the crocus. It shall blossom and abundantly and it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of God, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make them firm." I plucked these from all over the place, so they're not in order.
Okay. Yeah.
"Say those who have an ancient heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance upon the recompense of God. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. And then the lame man shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute shall sing for joy, for waters will break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert." So deserts are going to blossom. There's going to be streams in the Sahara Desert and places like that. So it's going to all come back to life. So there's going to be plenty of food and vegetation. It says that there won't be any more disease. There won't be any blindness. There won't be any type of physical ailments. It says the lame or the handicapped will walk. The blind will see. The deaf will hear. And I think this is an idiom for saying that there won't be disease. "On that day shall living waters flow out of Jerusalem, and half to the eastern sea and half of them to the western sea. It shall continue in summer as in winter." So there's again, it's going to be new fresh water coming out in that desert area. This famous verse, "The wolf shall lie down with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the lion and the fatted calf together, and a little child shall lead them. The wolf and the lamb will graze together. The lion will eat straw like an ox, but dust will be the serpent's food. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, says the Lord." So the animal life is going to change. All animals are going to be tame. And it looks like their carnivores are going to become herbivores. So
People as well. That's
yeah, I'm going to get to that verse. But also, this is good. What I'm trying to put forth here is that this is going to be a lot like the Antediluvian period, the pre-flood period. Human beings did not eat meat until after the flood. That's when God commanded Noah to eat meat. So apparently it was vegetarianism, which I'm going to miss having a good steak, but
Right.
that's what it's going to be like. It says,
Okay,
"Oh,
I can
no
see
more
it.
shall
I
there
like
be an
that.
infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not fill out his days. For a child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner 100 years old shall be accursed." So life is going to be longer. If someone happens to die at 100 years old, they're going to say, "Oh, that was a child. That poor kid never got a chance to live his whole life." But if you are not a believer, I think it looks like you're only going to live 100 years. So
This is
again,
like
antediluvian period. Go ahead.
this is one generation of people. Then I mean, well, I assume that you'll still be having kids and stuff. But if you're
Yeah,
gonna,
there's going to be a lot.
wow.
Let me just pick out a couple of more choices.
And are we supposed to? What bodies are we inhabiting? Because there's this idea of like the heavenly body that we would get.
It's,
You know,
it's going to be the body, the same type of body that Jesus had at his resurrection. So it's physically, people were able to touch him. He would eat with people. Actually, every time Jesus appeared after his resurrection, he always ate
with
and
that
drank.
body, doesn't that come with the removal of the urge to sin?
Yes, we're going to have we're going to have the nature of God.
So, because what I'm wondering then is, the millennial kingdom will be ruled with a rod of iron,
Right.
and it's like Jesus's law is going to be the law. But then I wonder, when it comes to individuals, how much of a call will you even feel to be breaking that law? I mean, you'd have to be an idiot even in your state right now to recognize this as Jesus Christ the King, and then to disobey him. But I do wonder, if we're given new bodies with a removal of the urge to sin, how much of that law will even have to be sort of implemented, or will there be punishments doled out for individuals breaking those laws?
Good question. Let me read really quickly from Zechariah. It says, "Then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem," which is Armageddon, "shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, to keep the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles. And if any of the families of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, there shall be no rain on them." So what this is saying, that there will be people who survive Armageddon. They will not be in glorified bodies. They're going to be regular old humans.
Damn, that's
And they're going to be survivors, and they will be able to sin. And it says here that they're going to be somebody going to be disobedient, that they're supposed to come up to Jerusalem once a year to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. The 7 Jewish feasts that all represent the first and second Advent. The Passover represents his death. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is his burial. The Feast of First Fruits represents his resurrection. Feast of Pentecost is the church. The Feast of Trumpets, I think it represents the 7 trumpets in judgment beginning. The Day of Atonement are the final judgments. And then the last feast, the 7th feast, the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles, represents the millennium, because in that feast, you would, if you were a Jewish person, you would go outside and you would set up a tent, and you would, you go outside and be in the tent during that feast. And it just basically represents Jesus dwelling with us. So they're going to have to, the only feast they'll be told to participate in is that feast, because it represents the millennium. But people are going to be disobedient, because there'll be a punishment for them. They will not have rain. Any nation, so there are going to be nations, and if any nation does not come to the feast to Jerusalem for that feast, their nation isn't going to get any rain.
You know what's wild too? It sounds like there's going to be, maybe this is a crude way of putting it, but there's going to be like 2 classes of human beings then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have these people that have struggled through the apocalypse essentially, and their offspring, which I imagine probably will remain the same as them. And then you have this elevated class who made the right moves, were in the right place, in the right mindset, and right with God at the right time. And these people are walking around in their sort of like these heavenly bodies that are likened to the body that Jesus has after the resurrection. And I just think that you want to talk about human nature. What a breeding ground for resentment. So exactly. I can see, people are going to misbehave, to put it lightly.
Now we just did an episode with Brian of Demon Erasers, and like he brought up our favorite verse, Genesis 6:4. But he's like, well, what about the ones right before that, and the one right after? So I'm pulling it up here, and it says, and the Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also, so that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years." And the verse before is talking about the sons of God, daughters of man. The verse after is saying that the Nephilim were here, and that one that's just talking about men living 120 years is just thrown in there, kind of like why. And,
well, also with 120 years, from the time he told Noah to build the ark until the flood.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
So there's that. So it's a dual meaning. So he's basically saying that he's curtailing the life of man. Because not everyone lives to be 120, and a few people got a little bit, can live
But
in
it's
the Bible. Yeah, it was basically capped. He said you're not going to live this long anymore. And there was exactly 120 years between the time he told Noah to build the ark until Noah's finished the ark and the rain started falling.
And Moses died at 120 years. So like we were just kind of spitballing, and Brian was saying that people are like, once you mixed your blood with whatever kind of Nephilim DNA, you're capped. So could this mean that the blood of human beings is not mixed anymore after the 1,000-year reign, which is why we can live longer, and the people who still are.
That's interesting because to that point, who do we just talk to, Top, that said, and I think they're probably right. Like right now, we're all mixed again. It's all mixed up. It's just as it was. And I mean, everything,
the days of
nothing
Noah.
new under the sun. They're all doing, whether it's chimeric crap that they're building in labs or, all these different things. We're probably at that point again where mankind's genome is once again corrupt, and that we're all mixed to some degree. And so
that's why GMOs scare me so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
all that stuff. That's the crazy part when you're talking about like people, like there won't be any sickness, there won't be any blindness. My wife, she's a nurse, but she's healed a lot of these issues that she's had homeopathically or with vitamins, because it's things that we lack and things that we're not getting. And it's evident to me that it's like, oh, we're just being poisoned left and right. We have a sauna, we try to detox whatever we can because there's so much poison coming in. So it's like, if that stuff is taken out, then will our bodies be able to get back to what they're supposed to be?
Well, there are some interesting theories about what the antediluvian world was like physically, because I had a chart that I can't find it that really shows that like the judgments of Revelation, not only are they judging the world, but I think they're also getting the world back to a state that it was like before. I think before the antediluvian period, there weren't a lot of mountains. The mountains came up during the flood with the water coming from underneath the earth. It moved the
pushing
plates.
it up and open.
But then you see at the end, the seventh bowl of wrath, the mountains are flattened. The seas are no more, and there were no oceans in the antediluvian period. The oceans came after the flood. So it looks like, in a sense, God, with his judgments, he's judging evil, but he's also taking the world back to the previous stage. And there are folks who believe that during that antediluvian period, we had like a hyperbaric effect over the earth, that the air was much denser, oxygen was much richer, and because of the firmament, where the waters were above the earth, the waters below the earth, and it said the great windows of heaven were opened and the water came down. If we understand, if the person who said this, I think it was Ken Hovind or someone else, if they understand it correctly, those waters above the earth were causing a high pressure system all over the earth. So there was no glaciers or anything like that. The earth was almost a uniform temperature. And because of the pressure, there was hyperbaric oxygen everywhere. And as you probably know, hyperbaric oxygen heals. Mm-hmm. So that could be, and also that firmament probably also kept.
There we go. Dude,
exactly.
I was just thinking this, but I didn't want to say it because I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna mess this up."
Reptiles never stop growing. So if you have a reptile that lived for 1,000 years, it's going to keep getting bigger.
Right.
And also it would have filtered out the sun's ultraviolet radiation, and we're getting bombarded by that all the time, and it's like wrecking our cells. So if you have hyperbaric oxygen, if you have a different environment, if you have no solar negative radiation hitting us, those could be the reasons why life is longer and diseases are being healed.
Interesting.
That's a possibility.
Here, check this out. I want to, before we move on, there was something that I've been meaning to tell you, but we haven't done this Revelation series in a while. But we were talking at the top of the show about this guy named Cliff High and how we're going to do a deep dive on his information. But he's got that linguistics, predictive programming thing. And I've been beating this subject to death, but it's just really fascinating. And one of the things that this predictive programming AI has predicted was that very soon we're going to see an event. And this event is going to cause sort of like what he described as an LSD hallucination type of experience amongst tens of thousands of people. And these tens of thousands of people are specifically going to be located all throughout the Bible Belt of America. And they are going to come away from a 10 to 12 hour trip or hallucination saying that they experienced the rapture, but they themselves were not raptured. And this is going to be like a big moment that grips, the attention of the entire country. But I just thought that was very fascinating because of the times that we're closing in on and exploring all these ideas about pre-trib or post-trib or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this guy who is very much into like science fiction and those sorts of things, I don't think he's necessarily looking at things through a biblical lens. He looks at it and assumes it's going to be a hallucinogenic event. And I don't know what data he's got, so I can't necessarily push back against that. I'm not at all saying there couldn't be some manufactured hallucinogenic experience that they're aiming at a certain group to provoke a certain, notion to come out of that group, like people that live in the Bible Belt. But I think that that's very fascinating. I just wanted to say, keep an eye out for that because so far, so good. This guy's doing a really great job of predicting things with this predictive linguistics program. And I just think that that's very interesting. Tens of thousands of people for 10 to 12 hours are going to have some sort of vision, more or less, about the rapture happening, but they themselves not being raptured.
That is interesting.
That's very interesting. There's a lot with this guy. I don't know what to make of him, but I know that it's very fun.
So a couple more things that I want to get to, kind of how people are going to react. So, because again, this is a theory. But as far as the hyperbaric stuff and the ultraviolet radiation, it doesn't say it specifically, but I think it's fascinating. But another thing, there's going to be a lot of singing going on, and I know you guys know about the different frequencies and how they can heal. And I think that if there's singing coming from heaven, the resurrected saints doing all these singing, then you're going to have frequencies that are going to really affect the way people think and heal. And what is it, that Rife technology, which right. I know it works with. So I think you're going to have like just this amazing healing environment. And also says in one of the verses I read, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Everyone filled. So kings and priests, all the resurrected saints are going to be kings and priests. King meaning you're going to have your area you rule over, but you're also going to be a priest. You're going to be teaching the word of God. So everyone's going to have full knowledge. No one's going to be able to say, oh, I didn't know. So that's what the world's going to be like. So the question is, if you have this world where we have the deserts are blooming, people are living long lives, we have all the food we want, there's perfect peace, perfect provision, we have perfect healing, and you have Jesus ruling, why are people going to be upset? Well, this is, I think, the thing that people don't get about the millennium, where they think it's going to be perfect. And especially people who are unbelievers say, well, this is going to be, this world's perfect. We'd love to live in that world. What is one of the main objections you hear from people who are unbelievers? Say, well, if there really was a God, why is there evil in the world? Why doesn't he punish evil as soon as it happens, or right after it happened, or before it happens? Why doesn't he stop evil? Why is there all this? This will be the dispensation or the era where people get what they claim they want, and they're going to realize how much they don't want it. Because here's the thing, when people say, why doesn't God stop evil? They are thinking of big evil. They're thinking of genocide, child trafficking, murder, rape, things that only 1% of society. Most people are not rapists. Most people are not genocidal maniacs. Most people are not trying to hurt children in that way. So when you think of evil, what they're really saying is, why doesn't God stop the big evils that other people do? Mm-hmm. But you have to understand, if Jesus is going to stop evil, he has to stop all evil. That includes the little evils that we do: lying, gossiping, looking at someone who's not your spouse with a lustful eye.
You're not going to feel real great when Jesus shows up to stop you from jerking off. You're like, yeah, dude. I wasn't talking about these evils, Jesus.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're going to be on Pornhub, and then like a resurrected saint's going to come into he's going to appear in your room like, bop.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're going to be pissed off with that guy. Yeah, exactly.
Every time you get mad at someone without cause. These are all sins, but these are things we do every day. You know, I've got a temper on me. You know, if you ever want to see it, be in a car with me when I'm on the freeway,
Mm.
and hear what the language I use when someone cuts me off on the freeway. That's a sin. But we don't. That's not a big deal. Gossiping's not that big. You know, with little white lie. My wife says, "Do I look fat in this dress?" No, baby, you look fine. Yeah, yeah. You could stand to lose a couple. That's still a sin. It's not. It's not a big sin, but it's still a sin. So, but all of that's going to be punished. Jesus will be ruling with a rod of iron, and people are going to hate it. They're going to say, "Jesus, you can't. I'm not free. I can't do anything because you're always beating me over the head or punishing me every time I do anything wrong." Well, but this is what you wanted. You said you wanted God to punish evil. Well, he's doing it, and they're going to hate it. They're going to absolutely despise it. They're going to despise his rule. People are going to, again, we're talking about sinners, are going to despise his rule. They're going to despise the people who are ruling with him, the resurrected saints. They're going to hate them. Like you were saying before, Raven, there are going to be these two different classes, and they're going to absolutely despise them. That is why. So even when they have everything, perfect provision and perfect government, but and we talked about this when we were on with John, which will be airing next week. We were talking about how do you dissolve the problem with government? The only way to dissolve government is for there to be no government, for us to just walk in our uniqueness, because man was never meant to rule over man. But that's what government is. Government is some group of people ruling over other groups of people. Now we have different ways of doing it. You know, you have dictatorships versus a democratic republic, which I think is, I think the way the government of the U.S. is supposed to be set up, I think it's like the best that humans are capable of. I think a representative government is probably the best you're going to do, but that's not God's plan. God's plan, which we'll talk about when we get to the New Jerusalem, is for us to all be our own rulers and not to be over anyone else. So, but man wants a government. And Jesus is going to give them. This is the ultimate government. This is the only government that could ever work. The only way you can have a government that would work is if people never did anything wrong.
It's funny, right? It's like all throughout the Bible, they've been begging for a king. And then finally at the end, he's like, I'm going to give you the best king.
Right.
And trust me, you're not going to like it. And you get it.
Sometimes the worst thing you can do is give people what they want.
I've been thinking, like, I'm really latched onto this idea of this other group that is going to be filled with resentment. I mean, there are certain
not just
positions,
resentment, David, helpless resentment.
Right.
Completely. I mean, there's nothing you can do. You can't even stage some terrorist attack against supernatural beings.
Well, you can certainly try. See, that's where I was going with this, is like, resentment is one thing, but you can put people into a position that will have them far exceed resentment, that will twist them. Like, I've been watching the Lord of the Rings films, the original 3, over again. I just finished the last one probably like an hour ago. And it's like, how do you get, and obviously within the film, these orcs and these things are different species entirely. But what I'm listening to, it's like, it sounds like there is this shining white kingdom on the horizon, and then outside of its walls are these people that will be twisted and resentful. And, you know, you want to talk about, during that time, it seems to me that you would see the worst version of human beings in those people particularly, because I can't imagine a harder situation to come to terms with. There are lots of things that people deal with that cause them to falter one way or the other, but to not be able to square the idea that, you know, Jesus Christ is here in the flesh ruling this kingdom and you are in opposition to him, that's going to create the closest thing to a monster that a human being could ever become. And that's where you get like hordes of orcs.
And then when I'm putting together why you think, Ed, that this the end of the little season will be quite quick, because these people are not going to be well organized. They're not going to be thinking straight. They're going to be furious. And when they're given this option, they're going to leap towards it, and they're going to unify really quickly, and it'll probably be over in a couple of minutes, because there's no organization. There's not really a plan. It's just anger, and there's not much you can do. There's not much you can say.
Yeah, there is, because again, they're being ruled over by these resurrected saints, so they can't really organize. until the end when everyone withdraws to Jerusalem. But I want to give an example of why human government can never work. And this, when I was in college, we had a professor who was teaching us. It was a class on socialism, and he was a communist. And he told us that the reason he was an American who became a communist, and we asked him why do you believe in communism? He says, well, because capitalism is based on selfishness, but communism is based on goodwill. We're like, what? Because we look at the Soviet Union. He says, no, they're not doing it right. Here's what he meant by that. And he was actually correct. Communism. What is communism? From each according to their ability, to each according to their need. So basically, what you would do is, let's say you're a doctor, and you just love treating people. That's what you do. You don't charge anything for it. You just go in and you treat people. Well, how do you live? Well, there's another guy who's a farmer. He just loves farming, and you go to him and he'll give you vegetables. He won't and whatever and meat. Well, how does he get things he needs? His electricity. Well, you have a guy who just loves being an electrician, and he will fix the guy's electricity. And so everyone just gives. You take what you need from people who produce it, and you give and you give from your value, whatever you're good at. And if everyone does that, then it works. And theoretically, that would work. The problem is it requires perfect people, because all you have to do is have one person who takes more than they need, and that creates a deficit. So let's say the three of us are in a community where we're just sharing with each other, and let's say, I want more of produce than Raven gets. I'm gonna take an extra loaf of bread. Okay, well, now Raven's down a loaf of bread. Well, now he has to take now to make up for that deficit, he has to take a loaf of bread from Top. Now Top's down a loaf of bread. Now he has to take one from me, or from someone else, and all of a sudden it's not equitable anymore. So as soon as one person gets selfish, it doesn't work. So everyone has to be perfect in order for human government to work. And that's what Jesus is going to be telling people. That's what Jesus is going to be showing in the millennium, that I have to force you to be good in order for this society to work. Otherwise it won't. But in order to force you to be good, I have to stop your evil and punish it immediately. And that's what people are going to hate. So they're going to resent Jesus for doing it. They're going to resent his magistrates, the resurrected saints, and they're going to resent themselves because they realize that there is no perfect government. They're going to be out of hope. There is nothing that they can hope for secularly that will make them happy, and they're going to realize that, because we have everything we said we want, and we're still not happy. So there's going to be a lot of brain damage happening there.
They're building building like their what's that, like their Minority Report? This predictive
pre-crime.
Trump's daughter's doing that right now, and that's like during the millennial reign. That'll probably be in effect, which is actually kind of interesting. The technology because if you leave this up to man to use it, forget about it. Like, they're not going to get any of the the people on Epstein's island, but they're going to get you for minor tax evasion or whatever kind of wrong thought you have. That technology will be used against them. There's no organization. There's no way out of it. It's a horrible existence.
And even without the sort of religious aspect, even if you took Jesus out of the picture and this was strictly just, we are here by chance and everything is random and just molecules smashing together, evolution is real, yada yada yada, it is still the lot of the human experience to end up at the finish line and find that it's not what we wanted. I mean, that is talk about something that speaks to human nature. I mean, 100%. You could give human beings, they could tell you what we can get together as a collective and shout into the sky, this is exactly what we want, give us this. And if it dropped down on our heads, we would realize, shit, this is not at all what we want. That is built into us. It's a story as old as time. Over and over again, we strive for something, and then when we get there, we realize it's not what we thought it was.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast.
Exactly. We're on our way there. We're going to get to a point where we built this thing to some grandiose level, and then we're going to go, shit, this
I don't want
sucks,
this.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's
the most miserable people in the world are rich and famous people, because they've gotten everything that they thought would make them happy, and they realize, I'm not happy.
That's it, man. And that's
you guys, I don't know. You guys are much younger than me. I don't know if you remember the show Family Matters with like Steve Urkel. He was like
of course, yeah.
So he was actually when we were in school together. Well, a few years apart.
Oh, that's funny.
And I saw him, and I struck up a conversation. Hey, man, how you doing? Your show was great, and all that. And he was like, yeah, he was down. I was like, dude, what's wrong? And he just, I guess, when he was waiting for someone to just ask him that, and he just spilled to me. And he said, you know what? There is nothing worse than having everything.
Wow.
I'm like, what do you mean? He said, man, he said, you can still hope for stuff. There's nothing else I can hope for because I've had everything. And I'm still not happy. So I don't even know how to be happy. Exactly. Yeah. Ecclesiastes is a perfect rendition of that. I mean, a perfect explanation, perfect example.
But that's a tale as old as time, right? I mean, we see that echoed through even if you didn't know that story, you see it echoed in every meaningful show. I grew up knowing that because it was ingrained in me from every story with a moral, wrap up at the end. And for us to get to the end of the line and have that experience collectively is certainly our destiny.
Yeah. You know what? I couldn't explain it before, but like I've had family members where, because I'm always trying to do the next thing, and I get frustrated. And if someone's close to me, I'll tell them like I'm frustrated about this because I'm trying to always build something, and they're like, why don't you just like be happy about what you got? And I'm like, I am. I'm happy about what I got. You know, I have a beautiful family. We have a house. We have a dog. My parents and all that stuff. But I'm like, I just feel like it's miserable. I'd be miserable if I stopped. Like if you just
We're going to get to this when we get to what's going on in the New Jerusalem, because we have this idea of heaven or the New Jerusalem. We're just going to be maintaining. We're going to have everything. We're just going to be, chilling out forever. No, we aren't. We're going to keep growing. That's the whole thing. We got to keep growing. We're going to grow for eternity. And I'll get into detail because, like you said, it's great to be content, but you can't have a malaise. You can't just get into a maintenance mode, and we won't be doing that.
That's great because a lot of people, when it comes to the idea of like heaven, it's like, what is everything just like super nice and perfect, and you don't grow anymore, and you don't make mistakes, and you don't. And I'm like, that doesn't sound great. If you were to say like, yeah, I have this place you can go to and you can live forever, you're going to remain static. You're going to be the same person for the rest of eternity. You're not going to have any challenges to overcome, any mistakes or missteps you're going to make. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, I'm going to give you when we do this. When we get to that, I'm going to give you my crazy Ed Mabrie theory about what I think is going to happen. It's going to be, I don't even think I put it in my Revelation series. It's so out there that I'm like, I don't know if I want to.
I'll leave that for NDS.
I'll put it on your show. I don't know if I want to expose myself to this, but yeah, it's interesting about what I think we're going to be doing for eternity. I think it's going to be. I think it's interesting, and it could be totally wrong, but we'll get there.
We'll be mining gold for the Anunnaki.
Exactly.
Suspending it in their atmosphere, getting eaten.
Yeah, we're going to become the Anunnaki.
What are we doing?
Incredible.
So how does this end? So then after the 1,000 years, it says Satan is released for this short period of time, and he has one job to deceive the nations and to gather into making battle against the beloved city. So apparently when this 1,000 years is ended, everyone is going to withdraw to Jerusalem. So I'm going to read 3 verses that were in that link. Okay, 3 of them. Here, 1. He will be great and he will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. Next verse. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all the kingdoms and bring them to an end. It shall stand forever. Last verse. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. My point in bringing that up is this kingdom is not for 1,000 years. The kingdom never ends. The 1,000 years is for this test period. For Satan is locked up, Satan is released. But it doesn't mean that Jesus will only reign for 1,000 years. His kingdom is everlasting. And I know everlasting is an English word. Let's look at the actual definition. It means without end. You also see it in the book of in the epistles of Peter. Same word in the Greek. It never ends. And that's another one of my big issues with the little season, because in the little season, Jesus apparently goes away and takes the saints with him and changes the animals back to carnivores and it curtails lifespans and all this kind of stuff. That's not biblical. There's no place that says or implies that Jesus goes anywhere. In fact, it says the opposite. His kingdom does not end. So when the little season happens, the whole point of the little season, the whole point of Satan being released for this short period of time is for people to come and make war against Jerusalem. Why would they make war against Jerusalem if Jesus isn't there? What would be the point? They're there Satan will deceive the nations to overthrow Jesus.
It's, you know what it is? What it seems like. So these people that are the human beings that are in the millennial reign are the people who messed up, who didn't make this right decision. You
Right.
have 1,000 years of this is what you're gonna do, and then like at the very end, he's like, well, here's one last choice. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go and because I'm sure that not all humans, the people that are like us that are fallible, are going to join Satan in that last crusade that he's going to do. They'll be
No, you will be saved. You can believe in Jesus and be on Jesus' side, but there are going to be some who again are going to be so resentful that they just like, I don't want this. I hate being ruled by Jesus.
but that's their last choice, right? And it's
Right.
like that's super fair. Even though 1,000 years, he's like, he's going to force you to do good.
Mhm.
Your last choice, he's still giving you this choice, and then that's going to be that.
And if you're
That
saved,
just-
you're okay with making the right choices. You're fine with it. Only
Yeah.
if you have bad intentions will the rod of iron be on you.
That's the scale, though, right? Of like human nature. Like these people that will be left that are going to be writhing and rebelling are the ones that have fallen into the most like dastardly psychological traps that human beings can fall into. And it's insane because there's no understating a human's ability to dig their feet in and like galvanize to a cause and not be yielding whatsoever, even right in the face of the truth. So it's like, yeah, these are going to be people that have, if when it comes to like demons and sinning and hell and all these different things, like the people that have fallen most victim to those machinations and are now living in a just a twisted psychology. It's just the worst form of humanity.
Yeah, they're gonna be their brains are gonna just be completely damaged by it, and they're just gonna be overcome with their rage and their hatred for it. I mean, you look at people to this day. We talked a little bit about what's going on with the Ukraine war and on the verge of World War III. There are people in Congress right now who want a nuclear war. Like, how in the world can you want that? But there are war hawks who genuinely want to have this war. I'm like, what the hell's going on in your head?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's the worst pitfalls of human psychology mixed with the ability to hit a button and
Basically.
launch a nuke.
Yeah. So the way the millennium ends, Satan is released. It looks like all of the good guys withdraw to to Jerusalem, and again, it says that in that verse that the people surrounding Jerusalem are going to be like the sand of the sea, meaning that there's diminishing returns over time. There's going to be a lot of reproduction over 1,000 years, perfect environment. People are going to be having babies like crazy, and they're going to be growing up and they're having babies over and over again. You could easily have billions of people born during that time if you do the math. And there's going to be a ton of them. But when I say diminishing returns, it means that over time, there are going to be fewer and fewer believers. You have the resurrected saints. I'm speaking of the people who are just regular humans who choose Jesus' side. There are going to be fewer and fewer of them as time goes on, which is one of the reasons why God has to limit this time, because it was the same thing as in the Antediluvian period. If God hadn't cut the time short, all of humanity would have been wiped out by the Nephilim. And if he made this longer than 1,000 years, then all of humanity would have fallen again. I mean, there'd be no one left. And God makes short work of them. It says fire comes down from heaven and devours them. That's it. And people have shown finally that no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how good or how bad, people will always choose themselves over God. And then God can do his final judgment, which we'll start talking about next time with the Great White Throne.
The word sinner, I think, has been with us for so long that in 2024, it's almost weird to try to really internalize what that means, right? And I saw a meme one time with a guy in a suit with like long hair and a little bit of a beard, and he's kind of looking sad, and the caption just says, "Forgive me, Lord, for I am an evil retard." And I feel like right now, like that is the most potent thing. It's almost like we need a rephrasing of or a reshaping of the language that we use to describe transgressions against God. It's like, we kind of are like evil retards. I mean, like, there's good in humanity. Obviously, there's good in humanity, but like, our choices over and over again, in the face of God's graciousness, really kind of leaves you with no other way to define us. Like we are, we're born sinners. We are inherently evil and retarded. But I mean, we're still given a choice over and
Right.
over again.
Right. We have free will, meaning we can choose to do right and we can choose to do wrong. We're free agents. So when you say we're born sinners, what that really means is that we were born without that connection to God.
Mm.
Adam was born connected to God. He could commune with God regularly, constantly. Jesus was also born. That's why he was born without the blood of Adam.
Mm.
Jesus was created in his physical body was created in Mary's womb. So she was not his physical mother in the sense that he didn't have her DNA.
Right.
He was formed in the womb, and so yeah, because you don't get your blood from your mother. I mean, I have a different blood type than my mom. So your blood doesn't come from her. So Jesus had pure blood, so he was able to be in constant communication with God. And so what he said, and blatantly in the Gospels, he said, "I do nothing of my own. I do only what the Father tells me."
Is that what
Jesus
that means?
was God's avatar.
So the Genesis 6:3 thing where he says, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever." So it did before with Adam, but no longer after.
Right.
This is what we're talking about, right?
More or less. I mean, he says, striving is a struggle.
Okay.
He says, I'm not going to struggle with man anymore. I'm done, because he's flesh. It's 120 years and I'm out.
Just exhausted. It's exhausted. It really does make you, if you see this through the right lens.
We give our kids 18 years, right? So
18 years.
Yeah, not bad.
Right? God is endlessly patient with us.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I was getting to right there, is like, it is disheartening to see our behavior. We just seem to be stuck in a loop over and over again, doing the same thing over and over again. And each time God kind of loosens the constraints and gives us more breathing room and a little bit more grace to see if maybe this time, and at the end of it, we just suck so bad. And it really truly is like, thank God, because he could have just like swept us off the table into the trash bin, and who would have blamed him?
Yeah.
Who would have blamed him?
So basically the only way we can choose to be with God, to be like God, is, again, we can't do it on our own. And this is finally proves that all we do is we can't do it with our own heart. We have to get a new heart. And that's what happens when you accept Jesus. You're given a new heart that's able to have God dwell in you, and we can hear from him. Now, we hear from God, we still sin because we still have these flesh bodies. We still have the corrupted. But once we have our new bodies, we will be in complete communion with God. And remember what the definition of sin is. Sin is doing something outside of God's plan. That's really what it is. I mean, the first sin, original sin, was when Eve was tempted to be like the Elohim. If you eat this fruit, you will be like the gods, like the Elohim. That was not God's plan for her, or at least not for it to be done that way. They would have eventually gotten the knowledge of good and evil. I'm going to talk about that in the Genesis series, but they weren't supposed to take a shortcut. God's plan was to teach them over a period of time. They said, nope, we want the shortcut. So they acted outside of God's plan. Every sin you commit is doing something that's outside of God's plan. But once we're in your resurrected body, you will have no desire. You will only want to do what's in his will.
I like that archers, this is from Jordan Peterson, archers adopted the term sin, and they use it to mean just missing the mark. And I think like it's such a simplified version of it. And like, damn, yeah, that's a great way to look at it, because if the mark is God, and you do something that is transgression, then to miss the mark is apt, I think. Man, I mean, but this was an excellent conversation. I'm glad that we picked this back up, because I often tell people, a lot of people will get mad at me, especially people within the Christian community, because of one idea that I have or another idea that I have. And it's a lot to explain to them, like what the nature of Nephilim Death Squad is. For me, it's a different experience for Top, than it is for me. Our experiences are different in this. Both of us get to learn, but I'm learning, in real time, all these biblical ideas and what's inside the Bible. And this show, and not only this, but also faithbyreason.net is a tremendous tool when it comes to trying to understand what's in the Bible, because it is a dense book. It is something that people have been, contesting over for all this time. I know one of the things that we were talking about off air afterwards with John was this idea of maybe one day doing a series where we source questions from the audience and we try to answer them. And for me, my experience in this is parallel to the audience. I am essentially an audience member, learning in real time. So I think that to do that one day would be tremendous. But in the meantime,
Yeah, we definitely want to do that. I think John and I we're already sold on the idea. I think we can maybe pick it up after the Revelation series is done, where we can get some questions at the beginning of the week, and then we'll talk at the end of the week. We'll John and I will get together and we'll give you some answers to it. And it's not because we're know-it-alls, but because the Bible's there. We're going to use it based on that, and just help people understand God better, because that's like you said, it's a very dense book, but it's a very simple message. The message of the Bible is that the Bible is God's story. He wants you to get to know him. How do you get to know someone? By hearing their stories, understanding their character, what they value, what they want, what their plan is. And if you understand all that, then you see that God's plan, despite how dense the Bible is, his plan is just, I want to hang out with you guys. I want to create you. You guys can rule over heaven, rule over the earth. You can have creation is yours. Have a good time, grow in your uniqueness, and then let's talk. I want to hear your stories.
Yeah,
I mean, again, back to the thing with the kids. When my kids grow up, I want to hear about their day. What are you guys up to? I gave you all this stuff. I want to see you go out in the world and be something great, and then let's get together, and I want to hear about it. That's the same thing God wants from us.
Yeah, right now we are in this place where we talked about like the rise of Christian nationalism coming, and if that is coming, it's for a reason. The reason is because people are waking up, and so if time is really short, and you're just waking up now, but I think hopefully we can do that series and we can offer people some answer to their questions. I think that would be huge.
I also think that nationalism is also people again choosing stuff over God.
Yep.
Why are they so happy about Trump being in office? I'm going to get my stuff. Inflation's going to go down. My stock market's going great. My Bitcoin is doubling. Oh, I got stuff. That's not why we're here. We're here to accumulate stuff. We're here to grow in God and get that reward, so that we can take that over into when we're ruling and reigning with Jesus.
Yeah, it's this little bit at the end there not reminded me, but it kind of enlightened me a little bit as to how to pray again, right? Like, so like I'm constantly thinking about like, well, what do I pray? Like you're having a conversation with this person, but now I'm thinking more along the lines of like, well, if I am his kid, like, what do I want to hear from my kid? And what do I hear from my kids? I hear a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of I wants. Yep. I hear a lot of just nonsense. And I'm just like, it's draining. And it's like, well, if my kid comes up to me and they're like, yo, you know what I did? I threw this ball over the fence. And I'd be like, I saw you do it, but it's cool. Like, so, like I often take for granted is like, God saw me do that. So like, I'm like, why would I even mention it? It was like, but I like that. I like when my kids tell me that. So maybe that's something that I need to add into my prayer life, #prayer life.
Right. Yeah. We have the ability to fellowship with him now. That's when I said before, quoting Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is within you. We have access. We can talk to God. This is what happened during my day. This is how I felt. That's what he wants. He wants us to walk and talk with him, to walk with him. And so I want to end with, well, my portion of this, you guys can talk as long as you want. Just back to the little season thing. And so I know when in my video, I kind of get a little harsh, but my whole thing with it is my passion is for people to have good doctrine. And when I presented what I presented today and what I presented in my Revelation series about what the millennium is like and what the reign of Jesus is going to be like, my question to you guys, to the little season people, is, are you sure this happened already? I mean, can you honestly tell me that this is all this stuff has already happened, that the kingdom without end happened, and yet Jesus went away? All the things, does it really make sense to you? And I'm looking for an explanation. I want to know why you believe it.
To that point, Ed, the way my brain works is a little bit different, but I think we come to like the same conclusion. The major question that I had that I think to me really kind of put a stop to this And I'm still open to information, and it's a fascinating topic to explore.
Yeah, I mean, like the 547 AD is crazy.
That's
like
a very
what happened
fascinating
there,
time.
yeah.
I think it was something like that, 547 or whatever it was. But
Like the worst
you know,
year on Earth. Like everybody died.
it was yeah, there was like X amount of days of darkness and all this crazy shit. But it has to make sense for me in a way that is advantageous to the opposition, and that's not so clear, actually. How is it advantageous to confuse us about the timeline? I haven't really pinned that down. I can get behind the idea that it very much looks like there's a deception going on, and I greatly empathize with people who see evidence for a deception. Like, hell yeah, dude, we are being deceived. Like, you're right on. But when it comes to confusing us about where we are in the biblical timeline, it seems to me that if your aim is Christ, you're going to be okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so where then is the advantage? And I haven't found that yet. And I'm not saying just because you have a theory that we've been lied to, that you're then, I'm depending on you to give me the answer. Well, like, why have we been lied to? What's the goal? I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying I haven't found a why yet that makes me go, that would work to their advantage. They could deceive everybody with that one thing if they could do that. I haven't found that yet. In fact, I'm not really finding any answer as to how it's a big win to deceive us about where we are in this timeline. And so,
Yeah, I get. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say I empathize with people, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with exploring these ideas. And I don't find too many people that are content creators that are saying adamantly that this is definitively what's happening. They're just exploring these ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. But I haven't found that why yet. And to me, that's everything. There needs to be an epiphanous why. Like, I need to look at it and go, oh, shit. That's what we're missing if they do that. That's the part that damns our eternal souls if they do that. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't found that.
Right. I guess to me it has to match the Bible, because one of the objections I get is like, well, our history's been hidden. I'm like, well, how do you know? I mean, your evidence that history's been hidden is the fact that. Well, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. When people say, history was hidden from me, we don't know. Well, how do we know that? Well, because it was hidden. Well, that's kind of circular reasoning. When you say that the evidence that history was hidden is the fact that that doesn't exist. Your evidence for something existing is the fact that it doesn't exist. And my other thing I look at is Satan only has one job. The Bible says that he's doing one thing. He's gathering the nations to battle against Jesus in Jerusalem. He's doing a lot of deception, but that's not what's going on right now. Most nations would just like for Israel and the Palestinians and the Arabs just stop fighting. Most nations are not being deceived to go to war against Jerusalem. That's not happening. And the other thing is that my other big problem with the little season is that it makes Satan way more powerful than he actually is. That he could actually hide 1,000 years of, I think I mentioned this before, Satan could hide 1,000 years of the greatest kingdom that ever existed, a supernatural kingdom where Jesus ruled, where there was no disease, where there was where the lion and the eating straw like an ox, a wolf and the lamb lying down together. He could make all that disappear, yet he couldn't make Jesus' first advent disappear. Wouldn't that be as advantageous and easier? I mean, when Jesus was on earth for 33 years, he was only in this little narrow strip of land in the Middle East, about the size of New Jersey. His ministry was only 3 years long. Wouldn't that have been much easier to make go away than 1,000 supernatural years?
Right.
Yet he couldn't do that. And I mean, why couldn't he have just gotten rid of the New Testament? They were just a bunch of letters Christians were exchanging. How is it that he could not cover up the first advent of Jesus, 33 years, only 3.5 of which were actually impactful, that only impacted this tiny area at the ass end of the Roman Empire, yet 1,000 years of a worldwide empire, he could just make it go away? I don't believe Satan's that powerful. And I don't believe God is that weak. If God could preserve 3.5 years of Jesus's life, and you tell me God could not preserve 1,000 years of his reign, giving us some record of it, that's some definitive record, not some cool looking buildings with some antennas on top that you'd have to read into it, that, oh yeah, this must have been Jesus because, these buildings are weird and we can't recreate them. That doesn't prove that Jesus had anything to do with it. That's
Right.
the Tartaria thing. Again, it really goes back to preterism. That's really what this is. The little season is basically preterists have hijacked Tartaria and said, "Hey, this looks pretty cool. Let's fold our doctrine into Tartaria, and now we can go back and say, well, this is proof that Jesus came back in 70 A.D. Even though there's no evidence of it. This is we can use this to promote preterism. That's really what it gets down to, and it doesn't fit. And that's my big issue with it. Not that I want to start a fight with anyone. I just want people to not be deceived.
Right. Right. Well, we are in a time where getting the information right is incredibly important. There is more access to information than there ever has been, but there is also, because of that, a great confusion. And there are so many attempts to deceive by plugging in information that's just not correct or non-applicable. It's very important to use as much discernment as possible. And also, for those of you who are looking into the little season, like I said, I don't blame you. It is a fascinating topic, and I get excited when I see some of the information that they pull up. But as long as you move around, not being married to these ideas and ready to just release them when something comes along and proves you wrong, there's no harm in it. And there's certainly no shortage of, just rabbit holes to go down. And I just hope that even if you spend a disproportionate amount of time researching a topic, don't be married to the investment that you've put into it. If something comes along and proves you wrong, even if you've been down that path for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, if it's wrong, it's wrong, and no harm done either. I mean, who can blame you? We're being lied to on a large scale constantly. I certainly don't have a foothold on the truth, maybe only slightly more than some average people walking around. And I myself have believed in things that ended up not being true. And I've done that more often than I've been correct. So, no harm in looking at it. And it is very interesting, but just move on if you have to.
Yep. Listen to everything, but don't accept anything until you do your research.
Yes.
That's right.
Ed, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Top, you're going to say something?
I would say that's right. I guess we'll let's bring it in. Ed, where can they find you again?
Oh yeah. So you can find me at faithbyreason.net. You can find me also on my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel, and as well as X. But yeah, faithbyreason.net's the way to go. The Genesis series is starting, and we'll be putting up some new content. I'll be doing it as regularly as I can. I appreciate you guys coming on there and reading it and supporting. I really appreciate it. And next time we're going to talk about the final judgment, when God does a great white throne.
How many more episodes do you think we got, Ed?
Let's see. I think about 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Wow.
Okay, so we got to start thinking about what the next thing is. Honestly, Ed, I think it is it would be a great service to offer people that that question and response thing that we talked about.
Yeah, I'm down for it. My passion is helping Christians understand what they believe.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I'm looking forward to that. So if that's where this goes after the Revelation series ends, then so be it. But the work that we've laid here, I think will serve as a tremendous tool for people and a great reference to constantly go back to all these episodes. I think it's going to end around like 25 episodes. You have 25 episodes, an hour plus each, to go back and reference all this material and get some answers. And that's what it's all about. So thank you, Ed, for your time. And guys, do go to faithbyreason.net and support Ed, because we talk about it all the time. These things are laborious. It's a great tool to have, but it's also labor that makes it available to you. And so if you find value in that, go and support Ed.
I think I'm also going to create like a blog post based on our episodes.
Okay.
And go episode. I think I'm trying to document this to make this thing be in as many places as possible. And then eventually when I do that, I want to put it all on one QR code where I can do something so that way people can click it and say, I don't want to listen to it, but I'll read it. I don't want to hear it, but I'll look at it. I don't want to look at it, but I'll hear it. Whatever. Just have it out there so that way it's in this library of Alexandria that, we consider the internet. Before we go again, people, just go to, if you are a member, go to the Spotify thing right there. Click that. Get all the episodes beforehand. You'll see Ed and John probably a week before everybody else, because that's up there right now for members only. So if you are a paying member, make sure you do that. It will behoove you to do that. And Ed, again, thank you. It's the weekend now, so I'm out of here. See you guys later. Peace.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you can't. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.